Now that we have the ability to create rooms, we need to be able to show the rooms that have already been created. So to start, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of more organizing here. So I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call it create room. I'm going to drop the create room script in there. Make a new folder called generic. I'm going to drop in the DDOL script. New folder, I'm going to call it networks, and we'll drop these two in there. Okay, so now we need to make a new script. So right click, create C# script. Going to call it room layout group, and I'm going to select my room layout group here in the hierarchy. I'm going to drag that script over onto it and open up room layout group. We don't need update or start. Go ahead and delete those. And we don't need system collections. So the first thing we need to do is add a serialized field variable and make it a game object, and we will call it room listing prefab. We just need to make an accessor for it. Same thing for the name, but without the underscore, and capitalize the first letter. And get return room listing prefab, and we do not need a set for that. We're gonna need to go back to the editor. We're gonna make a new script. We're gonna call it room listing. And I'm going to go back to the room layout group in the hierarchy. It looks like I forgot to save. So let me go back and save my changes here. All these pop-ups. Okay. So now with it selected, I have the room listing prefab option over in the inspector. Now I'm going to go over to my prefabs folder, and the one we made earlier, we're just going to drop it in there. So now we need to make some changes to the room listing prefab. So I'm just going to drag it into Canvas. That way we can see it. And I'm going to go ahead and add our new room listing script to it. And go ahead and go to scripts and open up room listing. We shouldn't need update, but we will need start. I'm just going to put private in front of it. And also under using, we're going to need using Unity engine.ui, and we get rid of the top two, collections and collections.generic. Okay. So we really only need two variables to get started. So the first one's going to be serialize. So serialize field. We're going to do private text, room name text, make an accessor for it, private text, room name text, and we're only going to need get. And next variable is going to be a public boolean of updated. We're going to use get set for that. Okay, save your script. Then go back to the editor. Wait for it to update. Make sure you have room listing selected. And where it says room name text, you're just going to drag the room name text part of the prefab into there. And go ahead and hit apply at the top right. This will save the changes to your prefab. So now we need to make it so that we know whenever this button is clicked, and when it is clicked, we need to perform an action in relation to that specific button and its information. To do that, we need to add a listener. And what I want to do is I want the listener to call a script outside the button and tell it to perform actions. So in order to do that, I kind of have to set up a trail of references to where I want it to go. So the first thing I need to do in order to set that up is make a new script, and I'm going to call it lobby canvas, and make another new script, and I'm going to call it main canvas manager. So my canvas manager is going to be responsible for keeping track of all the canvases that are underneath it, and it's going to go right here on canvas. So select canvas and drag over main canvas manager, and go ahead and open up the main canvas manager script. Okay, to start, I'm going to get rid of the void update and void start, but I will be using void awake because I want to do something when it first initializes. Okay, now I need to set some variables. So the first one I need is going to be serialized. I'm going to say private lobby canvas underscore lobby canvas, and like always, make an accessor for it. You're probably wondering by now why I just don't do something like this. And the reason is because you can't actually use an accessor on a serialized field. Unity does not like it and things break. So that's why I use the underscore version, and then I get it with an accessor. At the very top, I'm going to do public static main canvas manager instance, and then drop back down to awake and do instance equals this. That way we'll just make a singleton out of it. And save your changes. Go back to the project and open up the lobby canvas. And we're going to do a serialized field. We're going to say private room layout group underscore room layout group accessor. You should probably know where I'm going to be going with a lot of this by now, so I will be speeding up a little bit on things that we've done already and a couple times in the past. We don't need start or update. We do need to add an action for whenever we click the room listing button. So I'm going to do public void on click join room, and we need to pass in the room name, so string room name. And save that file, then go back to your editor. Wait for everything to sync up and load. Select lobby under canvas in your hierarchy, and drag over the lobby canvas script. And for the room layout group, just expand lobby and drop the room layout group in it. And be sure to save your scene. I just remembered I actually made a mistake earlier. So I'm going to open up the main canvas manager. And I have the lobby canvas as private, but I want to be able to get that from anywhere, so I need to make that public. So the serialized field remains private, but the accessor remains public. So once you make those changes, save, and then go to your room listing script. And under start, we're going to set up a listener so that we can perform an action when the button is clicked. So I'm going to do game object, and I'm going to call it lobby canvas obj for object equals main canvas manager dot instance dot lobby canvas dot game object. And I'm going to do if lobby canvas object doesn't equals null, or rather if equals null, return. This should never happen, but basically if some reason the room listing gets created after the lobby is destroyed, we don't want to try to access something that's not there. And again, it should never happen, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. So now we need a reference to the lobby canvas itself. So lobby canvas equals lobby canvas object dot get component lobby canvas. And now we need to find our button script. So button equals get component, you guessed it, button. And to add the listener is actually pretty easy. You just do button, which is the variable we just set above, dot on click, and you can see IntelliSense is filling it out for me. Add listener, and it does get a little confusing here, so pay attention to the brackets. Lobby canvas, the one we just made a variable just above here, dot on click join room, and we're going to pass in our room name text. So it's going to be room name text, which is the object or component, and we actually need the text from it. So room name text dot text, add another closing bracket, and don't forget the semicolon on the end. And save. We need to make sure we destroy the listener whenever this object disappears. So we're going to do private void on destroy, which is called by Unity whenever this object is destroyed. I'm going to get the button one more time. So get component button like before, button dot on click dot remove all listeners. So we're going to remove all on click listeners whenever this object is destroyed. And save once more. And now I just need to make a method to call whenever I want to change the text, so that way when we create the button we can set it and it displays the name of the room. So I'm going to do public void. We'll say set room name text. I'm going to do string text, and it's going to be super easy. Room name text dot text equals text. So this is actually, the dot text is a property of the text component, and this text right here is referring to our variable string text. And you'll want to save after that. And I believe that's all we need to begin adding the buttons to the scene. So let's go ahead and jump over to the room layout group. We'll want to make one more variable up top. We're going to call it private list, and we're going to do the room listing script. So we're going to make a list of type room listing. We'll call it underscore room listing buttons equals new list room listing, and make an accessor for it. Again, it's going to be private, same type, list room listing buttons, capital first letter without the underscore, and then get, like before, return the underscore version. Oops, looks like I made a typo up here. I just need to make that capital. And this is the same thing like serialized objects. You cannot initialize them and use accessors at the same time. So I couldn't do something like this. And you'll notice it does take that and it accepts it as a solution, but Unity uses an older version of .NET and C#. So if we keep this in there, it's actually going to cause problems later. So until Unity decides to upgrade their framework, we cannot use that wonderful feature. So now we need something for when we do receive the room updates, which is going to be private void on received, private void on received room list update. This is called by Photon. It's built into the scripting, so it's something that's called every time you receive a new list of rooms. Okay, so I first need to get all the rooms. So I'm gonna do room info as type array. I'm gonna call it rooms equals photon network dot get room list. So we're requesting all of the rooms from the Photon network. Then we need to make a for each loop of type room info. We're going to call it room in rooms. And we actually need to make another method for this. So go ahead and go just below the on received room list update. And we're going to do private void room received string room. And back in the for each, we're going to do room received room. Oops, another mistake. I'm really slipping today. So it's supposed to be room info room. There we go. Okay. I need to set up another method which we'll be using later called private void remove old rooms, and it doesn't need any parameters. You can go and leave that empty for now. Right below the for each loop on received room update to remove old rooms. So what we're going to be doing is you're going to get a call from Photon telling you that there's a new room update. We're going to get all of the rooms. We're going to go through each of the rooms and pass it into room received. Room received is going to check if the room already exists, and if it does, it's just going to update values if necessary. And then when we get to remove old rooms, it's going to remove any rooms for buttons that we have up but no longer exist. In the room received, we do first need to find if the button already exists for the room. To do that, we're going to use link to find a property of the button and see if it can match data in relation to the room being passed in. Thinking back, I'm probably going to go ahead and open up my room listing script, and I think I'm going to change it around a little bit here. Actually, I'm instead going to do public string room name get private set, and then I'm going to go down to the very bottom where I have set room name text. I'm actually going to change that to room name equals text, and then I'm going to do the room name text dot text instead of equals text. I'm going to do equals room name. It would accomplish the same thing as if I left it at text, but I want to set this first and then set it to that. That way, if something goes wrong, I can more easily locate the problem. It's just a preference thing. Okay, and then go back to room layout group, and in room receive, do int for integer index equals room listings, room listing buttons dot find index, which is called link, x equals greater than symbol x dot room name equals room dot name. Okay, so what's going on here is it's basically going to look through all the scripts and the room listings buttons right up here, and it's going to take each one as entry x and compare x.room name, which is a variable we just set up, public string room name, and if it equals room.name. So if it equals this property, this parameter, and its .name property, and if it does, that index is going to return a value other than -1. If it returns -1, it could not be found. So we're going to do if index equals -1, which means the room could not be found. We need to then create a button for it and add it to our list. So we're going to do if room.isVisible, because we do not want to add a hidden room to our list, and room.playerCount less than room.maxPlayers, because we do not want to add a room which is full. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make an object from our room listing prefab. So I'm going to do it room listing object as game object type equals instantiate type of room listing prefab. And then I need to set the parent for that new object we just made. So room listing object. Now I'm saying object even though it's obj, but obj sounds funny, so I'm not going to say that. Dot transform dot set parent transform false. So what we're doing is we're setting the parent of the object we just made to the transform of the object owned or owning of this room layout group script, and we're just passing false, which makes it align to the layout group rather than stay at its position in world space. We just need to extract the room listing script from it. So room listing equals room listing object dot get component room listing, and add that to our list of room listing buttons. Dot add room listing, and make sure you choose the local version, the one with the lowercase starting letter. And now we're going to set the index to where it's at in the list. So it's going to be indexed equals room listing buttons dot count -1. You use the -1 because if there's only one added, say, it's going to be 1 minus 1, which would be 0, which is going to be correct because arrays and lists always start on 0. So just below that, make a couple returns. We're going to do if index doesn't equal -1, room listing equals room listing buttons index. So all we're doing is we're just pulling it from the index that we just set and made. Now if we do find a room listing, this step's going to get skipped as the index will not be -1, and then we're just going to pull it from the index that it found earlier. So now with that, we just need to do room listing dot, whoops, make sure you use the lowercase one, room listing dot set room name text room dot name, and it's very important to use the top one because I'm going to hover over the bottom one here. You'll see that it's no longer used by Photon. So make sure you always use the one with a capital letter first. So what we're doing is we're finding the room listing in our already made room listing buttons list, and then we're just updating the name because sometimes the names might change. Sometimes it's other things like the players available or max players, things of that sort. And now that we made a change to it, we're going to do room listing lowercase 1 dot updated equals true, and that's indicating that we made changes to the room and or found it. And that should be all we need for the room receive method. So go ahead and jump down to remove old rooms. I'm going to make a new list of type room listing, call it remove rooms equals new list of type room listing, of course. And this is just going to contain a list of the rooms we're going to remove. So now I'm going to go through each of the rooms in our room listing buttons list. So for each room listing, lowercase room listing, and room listing buttons. And we're just going to check if it was updated or not, because if you remember up above, anytime we find the room in the list or anytime we add it, we set it as updated equals true. So if the room was not in the list, it would not be marked as updated. So a really simple check, if room listing dot updated, so if room listing was not updated, remove rooms dot add room listing. So super simple code. If it's not updated, add it to the remove rooms list. Else, if it was updated, just mark it that it's no longer updated, basically confirming that we see it was updated, and we're going to unset that value. And that's all we need for that for each loop. So go ahead and make another one for each. Very similar. Room listing, and remove rooms. And we're going to do game object button, or rather room listing object equals room listing dot game object. So I'm just going to store a reference to the game object. Then I'm going to remove it from our room listing buttons. Room listing buttons dot remove room listing. And all we have to do is just destroy the room listing object. And that's it. So go ahead and save. And I think we can give this a try now. Okay, so let's go back to the editor here. I'm just going to check over everything real quick. Let's make sure everything is set. Oh, and it looks like I actually missed something. So under canvas, up here in the hierarchy, make sure you have that selected. And where it says lobby canvas, you notice it will say none because I forgot to add it. So I'm just going to drag over my lobby canvas onto it. Okay, and we don't need the room listing prefab in the hierarchy anymore, so select it and delete. And we're ready to compile, but we need to do one more thing. We need to make sure that this scales properly to all resolutions. So if you remember from earlier, I'm actually designing in a 2560 by 1440 resolution. So I'm going to, still with canvas selected, go to the canvas scaler script. And where it says constant pixel size, I'm actually going to change to scale with screen size. And it just went all funky. That's kind of expected. Under reference resolution, I'm going to set it to 2560 by 1440. I'll make sure the match mode is width or height, so it will try to resize it based on a combination of the two. And this is if you want it to favor width more or if you want it to favor height more. I'm going to have it right in the middle, so at 0.5. I do a 1 pixel per unit, so it's at 100 right now. I just need to set it at 1. I find that's the easiest to work with, so you don't have to be like, all right, so if I put on a sprite that's 256 pixels, how many is that in world units? That can get really annoying real fast. But if you just do 1 pixel per unit, you know it's always going to be the same as what it is in the pixel size. So I think that's everything. Go ahead and hit save. So I ran a test off screen and I found that something was missing. I just need to change the create room script. So I'm going to go to scripts and then create room and open up create room. And where it says on click create room, all we do is we just tell Photon Network to create the room with the given name, and it does work, but we actually have to pass a couple parameters to make it work fully. So we're going to do room options, which is kind of like a configuration for the room. Room options equals new room options, and we're going to do is visible equals true, meaning that it can be seen in the room list. We're going to also do is open equals true, and we'll set the max players to 4, and then don't forget your semicolon at the end. It's giving me a warning here saying that don't use the lowercase version because it is old. Use the capital version. I talked about that earlier. So once you have that set up, we're going to go back down to where it says create room, and we're just going to pass in the room options. So I'm going to put a comma after room name dot text, pass in room options, and we're going to set typed lobby as default, and that should work. And the problem I was running into earlier is whenever you don't pass in room options, they max players default to 0. And in our room layout group here, you'll notice that it only works if player count is less than max players. Well, if max players is going to be 0, then that's never going to be true, and the room's never going to get added to the list. So go ahead and save those changes we just made to the create room script, and jump back to your editor. And now let's set up a compile. So go in the top left, hit File, Build Settings. Should be set to PC, Mac, and Linux standalone right here under Platform. Now in the scenes and build, yours is probably empty. If that's the case, just go over to Add Open Scenes. You only have to click it once, and your main scene, which you're on right now, should be added and checked. So once that's done, hit Build and Run. It's going to prompt where you want to save the executable. I already made a builds folder, and I'm going to name it game.exe, and just hit save. And it's going to build. It shouldn't take no time at all. You can pause the video right now if yours is still building. And I checked window mode, and I set the resolution to 1280 by 720 just because I don't want it taking up my entire screen. So I'm going to hit play. Okay, so it looks just like it does in our scene window, which is good. So I'm back in the engine. I'm going to hit play. I'm going to make a test room. Looks like it connected, joined lobby, and successfully created the room. I'm going to go back to the compiled one, and there it is, right there. Now watch what happens when I close out of the one in the editor. It disappears from the executable as well. So it's successfully adding and removing rooms. Now we just need to make something happen whenever we click the room to actually join it.